I'm catching up with the Fischer Random World Championship taking place in Iceland. In the semi-finals, we have Hikaru Nakamura playing Nodibek Abdusattorov in the other semi-final. Magnus Carlsen against Jan Nepomniachtchi. Carlsen playing with real intent in this tournament. He has, of course, abandoned the Classical World Championship. So he's a king in search of a crown. He really wants this title. First two games in the match between Carlsen and Nepo, it's 1-1. They traded wins. So this is the third game, and it's a really dramatic game. So quick recap of the rules in Fischer Random Chess. For each round, the baseline is shuffled. And in this round, well, let's have a look at these pieces. You can see the knights in the corners. Wow, that's really bad. Knights on the rim are very grim indeed. And in the corners, they're even worse. So, that's the big issue in this position. Carlsen started with knight g3. Now, this is really interesting. This just shows how treacherous these positions are when the pieces are just kind of dropped on the board. If black follows suit with knight g6, then knight f5. How do you defend the pawn on g7? Wow. Incredible. Could be all over after just one move or two moves. Nepo played g6, which I've got to say is a really ugly move. Yes, it stops this knight in its tracks. However, what does that knight now think? I mean, both these squares are covered. Bishop also. Well, it was a pretty bad to start with, and now somehow with the pawn here, it's even worse. b4 from Carlsen. Very logical. Seizing space, but also potentially letting the queen out. Maybe looking down that diagonal. f5. Nepo gains space in the centre. c4. Carlsen gains space, so this is very logical. These pawns supported by queen and rook, and the queen now strikes down this diagonal as well. e5, Nepo advances into the centre. Centre is still very important, of course, but also potentially lets this bishop out as well. f3, and that frees this bishop. Bishop h4, okay, a mischievous move. Pinning. Got to watch out for f4, so therefore bishop f2. But the real reason behind this move is that it allows potentially castling, well, I was going to say queenside castling, but long castling at any rate. We'll see castling in action in a second. Knight b6, I mean, this is such a provocative move from Nepo. Already Carlsen has gained a lot of space here, and he provokes another pawn advance, and this knight is getting kicked around, and this pawn move also looks very pleasant. If that's taken, well, then queen takes is possible, actually hitting bishop and pawn. Knight takes also looking good. Positionally just looks great for white. The knight comes to f4, attacking this pawn. Is it a problem? No, because here is where Carlsen castled. And actually, white's position is beginning to kind of straighten out. It almost looks like a normal chess position. These pieces are slightly oddly placed. Nevertheless, white seems to be doing pretty well. Just compare the two kings. Black's king still in the middle. White's king tucked away on the king side. Compare the two queens. Black's queen is just blocked in. White's queen looks very healthy down here. Bishop came out to support this pawn. Reasonable. And it does give black the chance to castle short. Although that would be very, very risky considering these pawns are advanced. Knight b3, very logical. Brings the knight in from the corner. Likewise from Nepo, knight f7. And now considering the placement of black's pieces, Carlsen decided, okay, I'm striking out with d4. And it does look fantastic for white. Already this, of course, is a clear threat. therefore c6. Oh yes, I should say, I mean, if that's taken, then this looks absolutely dreadful. The knight comes in. Just really, really menacing. c6 stops d5 and opens up the queen a little bit. Pawn takes pawn, pawn takes pawn. Well, Carlsen grabs a pawn for nothing, basically, and it looks desperate for black. Bishops exchanged here. I think, understandably, Nepo gets rid of that strong knight. And now he manages to castle. Castle queenside. Okay. I think we need an action replay. That was good fun. So, when you castle in Fischer random chess, the pieces always end up on the traditional castling squares. So, for example, if kingside castles, there you go, the usual castling squares. But in this case, we had queenside castling. And that does look a lot more secure than the king side, obviously, because at least these pawns are around the king. This is a really important moment in the game. Have a think. How would you play with white? Carlsen to move. Carlsen with white to move. What would you play here? It looks fantastic for white. How are you going to press forward? Carlsen played what looks, to my eyes, like a really sensible move. Bishop steps off the back rank, allowing the rook to perhaps come to e1 or d1, and it strikes down this diagonal. It's actually a big mistake, incredibly. You wouldn't think so, considering white's a pawn up and looks like just has an excellent position. But in fact, here is where white really needed to strike. And I think, I mean, the computer suggests two moves, d5 and b5. Certainly not obvious with this time control when you have to play reasonably quickly. I should say the time control, a little bit different. It's kind of rapid play. It's 30 moves in 25 minutes. And then you get 5 minutes for the rest of the game, plus 5 seconds increment per move, starting from move 31. So first time control, 30 moves in 25 minutes, no increment. So d5 or b5. Let's look at b5. The idea is just to open up the king. So for example, if pawn takes pawn here, then you take on c6 and bishop e2. Now that looks pretty strong. So knight takes, rook takes. White is very harmoniously placed there. You can see that it'd be very easy for this queen to switch back here. The rooks could also switch very easily to the b file. It looks perilous for black. Okay, what else? What about taking? That allows c6, and the king is horribly placed, and beautiful coordination. Knight check coming. White must be winning. And yeah, well, you can kick the queen away. Knight h6. Queen comes back. White is just very well coordinated here. Let's just play queen d2. And you can see how white can turn very easily to the attack here. Bishop c2 also looks very good. But watch what happens. Takes on d4. And here, well, Nepo played a sensible move, rook de8. In fact, knight h6 is even stronger. And that just kicks the queen around. So, for example, well, okay. Black to play and win now. Fairly easy tactic. There we go. Pin and win. Or if queen takes pawn, then this queen enters the game beautifully. If queen takes knight, queen e3 threatens the rook, also threatens knight e2 check, picking up the queen. I mean, everything works for black here. Or in this position, if queen e4, queen g5, threatening knight h3 with a fork there, but also the queen looks to the rook. It's incredible. Black's pieces just flood into the game. It's amazing how this queen, shut out of the game for so many moves, actually becomes a really important piece. That wasn't played, it's very strong, but instead rook e8, also very strong, just taking control over the e-file. Rook d1, knight e5. I mean, this is just a huge initiative now. The queen is in a bit of trouble. Queen takes rook h8, hitting the queen. The queen came back. Knight c4. The knight's leaping in, and of course this starts to open up the diagonal as well. Knight takes c6 from Carlsen. Be careful. Pawn takes knight. Queen takes pawn is mate. But Nepo, well, he's a pretty sharp calculator. He'd spotted this, of course. After a little check, knight here. Check. Rook takes. Yeah, if the king comes here, then that's spells the end. So rook takes, coming back here. And watch out. The queen swoops down with check. Another check and lots of checks. Another check. Black has broken through. Another check. I mean, there really is no defense for white. And at the end of it, a very calm move. Just get rid of that knight. And this king is left, well, climbing up a tree. And there's nothing good at the top, I'm telling you. So black just needs to do the biz with these pieces. That rook is in trouble. If it moves, then I dare say a check there is going to be very nasty. Queen e5. Attacks that one. Rook h4 check. Bishop e4, and I think that was the end of the game. I think Carlsen actually resigned here because after queen f2, well, that king is just getting checked pieces. Well, in this position, black, of course, is a rook up. That's going to be enough. And that one cuts out any nonsense. Check. Check here. Thing is, black is a piece up. The attack is deadly. And crucially, there is no perpetual check. Because after this, another check. King is safe on b7. And then it's black's turn at the other end of the board, basically. So I think this game is a really good illustration of how Fischer random generates such unusual positions that normally, you know, the good sense, the good judgment of even the strongest player in the world is disturbed. So we have this position, which looks fantastic for white, but within the space of just a handful of moves, Nepo had completely seized the initiative, and we had this position, and already incredibly, this is desperate, with this queen entering into the game even when it was stuck on the other side of the board. Brilliant game from Nepo, an amazing recovery. And after that, so he was 2-1 up, and actually in the fourth game, well, he only needed a draw, but well, made it, actually won the game. Very smoothly, very convincingly. So Magnus Carlsen out. That will be a big disappointment to him. Nepo will meet Hikaru Nakamura in the final, who convincingly defeated Nodibek Abdusatorov, who is a real superstar. So interesting to see Nakamura coming back into, well, not the classical chess world, but the Fischer random chess world. So I'll be recording a video telling you exactly what happened in the final. So watch out for that. Nakamura against Nepo.